All right, we're live. I want to welcome everybody joining us on our first initial thing that I'm calling Faith and Friends, where we talk to different people within our congregation and outside our congregation about their faith. It's not something that we do a whole lot. I should be able to see any kind of chats that come up as if you've got questions that come along the way. But today, I've got my good friend Holly Hess with me.
Hi.
Hi. So, Holly, if you could tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. I'm a mom of four. I have two children who are all grown up now, and a teenager and a teenager. So busy with that. I'm the Faith and Life Director. Actually, I'm not the Faith and Life Director. I'm the Director of Serving Ministries
Serving
at Mount
Ministries.
Pleasant Lutheran Church. Over the course of my 15 years at MPLC, that's changed a lot. I was Director of Serving Ministries. I was Director of Faith and Life. I've been a couple of different things.
So you've got a whole business card collection.
I do. I have a business card collection. People who know me as different things, but mostly
You just scratch it out, write the new title in.
Right.
Good plan. Good plan. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you spending some time talking about faith today. And like I said, I'll be watching the stream. If anybody has questions, pop them in there. I will ask a little personal question because I have four children as well. And I felt the biggest transition with the third child.
Okay.
I was like, you go from his and hers to his, hers, and ours. I didn't even feel the impact of the fourth. Was it the same with you?
Yeah, I think the fourth was easy just to, kind of slide into the mix. Yeah. And also with four, everybody has a partner. No matter what you're doing, you can send two here and two there.
Right.
Somebody be willing to do this and somebody else would be willing to go with to do that. So there wasn't the odd man out that there was with three. I didn't have to be that extra partner.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I thought four was a pretty smooth transition.
Yeah. And then you're completely double outnumbered in the house. So it can be dangerous.
Yeah. So then you just kind of give up on that.
It's like my mom has six, so seven. So it's like after the third, I don't think she even knew there are no pictures of me.
No, it's just how much chaos can you handle at that point?
So again, this is Faith and Friends. So we're going to be talking to Holly about her faith a little bit. So tell us a little bit about you in the church. If you grew up in the church, how you came here. I mean, just, kind of like the backstory on you.
Yeah, I did grow up in the church. I grew up in an ELCA congregation. I grew up in a really small town in northwestern Wisconsin. There were 500 people, 455 is what the sign said. And so there was a few things to keep you busy in town. Anything related to school, anything related to church, or, you could go to the two bars. So those were your options for any kind of entertainment. And so
that's like every Wisconsin town right there.
Right. Every Wisconsin town. So we spent a lot of time doing church things because that's kind of where our community gathered when we weren't at school or at the bar. So, I was active in Sunday school and vacation Bible school. And we had for such a small community, we had a really active high school youth group. So yeah, I found that, I spent a lot of time at church growing up. And one of my best friends who lived just down the street from me, her dad was our pastor. So I spent a lot of time at the pastor's house, which was a unique thing because I think a lot of times when I talk to adults, they put, pastor or priest or whoever their faith leader is kind of up on this pedestal or somehow separated from other people. And for me, I just grew up in and out of their home. And so, I would see him at church, but I was also seeing him, just throughout my day. And so there was something really special about growing up, really knowing my pastor on that kind of a personal level.
Well, and that's good that I did that because I think it'd go the opposite way as well, where sometimes, if the pastor was not the same in the pulpit as they were at home, it'd be like, what is going on here?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
I can understand that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like anyway, different story. We're talking about you. So, when you left there, I mean, how did you continue your faith?
When I left there, I went to college. I guess there was probably a break for me in college in terms of, attending church or being connected to church. That wasn't something I was super engaged in my 4 years of college. But I did then quickly after I graduated, get back into, kind of a church life once I was, felt like I was living a grown-up life again. Time to do all those grown-up things. And for me, being part of a church was part of that. So I got pretty involved in our church. We had at the church I was in Milwaukee just called a young female pastor who was about my age, and we were both kind of settling in to a new area. And so we became friends. And again, I've really found it interesting and special to have these friendships with pastors throughout my life.
That's
It's
really
a kind of an
cool.
interesting theme I hadn't thought much about. And then working at the church, that happens here
Yeah, I
too.
mean, cause well, yeah, you've been, here, and I think that that says a lot about, you, that having a call to serve, which we can talk a little bit about as well, because I think that's an important thing to think about. I mean, we're all called some way,
Right.
whatever we're doing, always in vocation, as Martin Luther said. But,
Hmm.
you specifically, in the ministry that you're in. Well, let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
What is it you do?
Well, it's changed a lot over the years. And some days I wonder, what is it that I do? I You hear a lot about church planters in the church, like people who start new churches or
Mhm.
start interesting different approaches to ministry. And I sometimes have thought that my job could best be described as like a program planter.
Mhm.
I somebody who's in relationship with a large range of people in the congregation, and so I kind of hear from people what they're interested in, what kind of questions they might have, what they might be called to do.
Mhm.
And I've been able to kind of bring that back on a staff level and say, hey, I've kind of heard some rumblings about this.
Mhm.
What do we think about offering something that would meet that need? Or what do we think about trying something like this?
Mhm.
So I kind of have seen myself as a go-between between pastoral staff and the
Mhm.
congregation,
Kind of like
and
a community connector in a way.
kind of like a community connector. Pastor Dave used to call me a faith midwife. So
That gives me a completely different visual.
a new visual.
A whole different visual.
So anyway, yeah, taking that to the to wherever you want to go with that. I always thought that was kind of an interesting thing, like organically kind of bringing ideas from the congregation to the pastors, to the council, and kind of moving ahead with creating things that are quickly responsive to congregational needs. Right now, my main focus is on serving.
Mhm.
How do we look outside of ourselves? How do we serve our community? What are our community needs? What's our place in the community?
Mhm.
If something happened to our congregation, would the community miss us?
Mhm.
Are we playing a dynamic role in the community? If there's
Mhm.
a question or a concern in the community, are we at the table trying to help solve that?
Mhm.
Um, and so that's been an interesting kind of challenge
I bet.
the last few years. And I really feel our congregation has totally stepped up to
Oh
that.
yeah, I agree with that. So let's. I mean, since you're out there, I mean, outside of Mount Pleasant Lutheran Church, I mean, yeah, in your travels as a
My
midwife,
travels.
where do you see God at work? In our community. I mean, what are some things that you've been seeing? Because I think that sometimes it's easy to just go about our busy days, not paying attention to anything, and not see all the things that God's really got going on.
Yeah, I see God at work all over the place in our community. One place really near and dear to my heart is, in the little free food pantry that we have outside
Hmm.
of the church. I see people coming and going from that all the time when I'm going past the church just about my daily business or when I'm here checking on it. And I also see people leaving things in it for others. It's been a real community connection point, I think. People who come to utilize the pantry, people who want to share what they have with others who might
Hmm.
come next. Um, so that's been really interesting to see how that has developed. It's not just us meeting a need, but it's kind of become a meeting point for people to come and take care of each other,
Yeah.
and to do it from a distance during this time when we've kind of had to be distanced more.
Right.
I still feel like there's a real that little food pantry has become like a magnet for
Yeah.
people who might be in need, but also who want to give and care for each other.
Right. It'd be cool to have on there is if it had like if somebody walked up to it, there was a hologram that came out. It was like Pastor Pat Van was like, "Hi, welcome to Mount Pleasant Lutheran Church."
We need to get on that.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
And then we need to have some kind of a camera that's videotaping people's responses to it when she jumps out of the food box.
Yeah, that would be. Oh, sorry, it was going on. I was like, that was in my head. I was like, that would be really neat. Anyway, so yeah, that is. I've seen that as well too. Where and what's been neat is that it's created connections. I think for people that normally wouldn't come in contact to come in contact
Right.
and really show that that care and love for neighbor. But I
Mhm.
mean, you're other places too. I mean, you're
Yeah.
at the Hope Center. You're down. I'd slip on my mind. The other place,
Yeah,
yeah, you know, I'm sorry,
hospitality. Those
Hospitality
other
Center.
places.
Yeah,
Halo.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine
Women's
you see a
Resource
lot
Center.
down, at those places as well.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think people are really missing a sense of community that they had pre-COVID.
Mhm.
So it's exciting when we are able to see each other again.
Right.
I see a lot of, like Oprah Winfrey style reunions. People who are like, like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. It's like something you'd see on TV, these reunion shows on
cool.
TV. It's been really fun to see that. There's also a sense of how do we come back together and do this in a way that's safe, or is it safe for us to be together? So it's interesting as I've watched like all these different segments of our community kind of start to sort through how are we going to do this? How do we come back from this? But the underlying theme, I think, is, I've missed you. I've been concerned about you. I care for you, and I'm glad to see you again. I keep hearing
Right.
that over and over between people and in conversations that I'm having. I saw a guy I hadn't seen in almost a year and a half, and he said, I've been so worried about you. I haven't seen you in so long. And I said, well, I've been really worried about you too. There is still this fabric of community that we had built that is there.
Right.
And it's intact, and it shows me the depth of those relationships, the
Yeah.
power of those relationships.
And to think of that, like God built us for community and to be with people, and that this last year has been like that strain on that. I mean, not
Right.
just like here within our church, obviously people
Right.
missed each other, but I mean, just the community as a whole. People that might not have a church home, or their church is the hospitality center,
Right.
where that's the only place they know to go and the people that hang out. I mean, that's what I think about with the outreach center in Kenosha, is that it was just a place where people would hang out, and there were relationships, and that even now, I mean, people come in and get stuff, but they haven't opened fully yet because it's not the time. But there's that want. People are asked all the time. It's like, hey, when can we just hang out here? It's that safe place where they've got people to talk to. They can hear the word. They can share God's love. Sometimes get in a fight, but
right.
Yeah.
But there's grace for that. There's grace for all those things, and
yeah.
I think that's what makes these relationships built around our faith, built around church and our church community really special, is that we extend each other a lot of grace, and that those are built on a love that's beyond us.
Right. Absolutely.
There's something special about that, and that can withstand a lot of things.
I like all that. So the other thing I want to talk about is, like, for you personally, what does it, like, your faith mean to you? I mean, and how does it form your life, or how does it form your relationships with others? Why Jesus makes a difference for you?
Yeah, well, Jesus makes all the difference for me. And I think for me, the best way to describe it is something that I learned in adult ed from Pastor Dave Eckelbarger. And he was saying that faith is like the ground, like you think of God or heaven or like you think of these things as far off things that are not close to you, right? But your faith in God, that is the ground that you stand on. That's what you're grounded in. You're rooted in that. And when you are rooted in that, you have a sense of calm, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of maybe safekeeping. I don't know exactly how to describe it. And then he said, sin isn't like this long list of things that you've done wrong, because
it's not.
I guess not, which was life-changing, right? I'm like, so I can rip up the list, the whole list.
I'm having a bonfire.
So I got the book and I threw it in the trash. And he's like, that's not what that is. That's separation. Think of sin as like being separated.
Right.
Yeah, the concept of that is being like separated from God. So, and that God is that grounding. And so if you're grounded there, then you have a sense of yourself that you can't maybe explain so much. You have a sense of general overall like well-being. And then if you do start to distance from that, then you start to not feel you start to feel that separation, and that God, it's like gravity. It's like it's always trying to pull you back into that kind of organic, authentic, true relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought that was really fascinating and true. So I feel like when I'm involved in my church, when I'm thinking about, how do I live my life in a way that models what Jesus gives us for a
Right.
roadmap, then I feel pretty fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And in times in my life when I've maybe moved from that for whatever reason, I would best describe it maybe as like an emptiness,
Right.
that can't be filled with other things.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you can't buy enough shoes to fill that, and you can't take on enough volunteer roles to fill that. And you
Right.
can't be a good enough mom to fill that.
Mm-hmm.
That's filled by kind of coming back to that home base
Right.
and then living your life out of that.
I like that a lot, because I certainly understand that, because I know that in those times where, like, you turn away, there's nothing that seems that fills that like it should. But when
Yeah.
you turn in,
Yeah.
instead of turn away, you turn in, and it's a much different dynamic.
Right.
Yeah. And I really like like a lot of times as Lutherans, we don't really think that we've got, like a faith story. We don't have that
Yeah.
one thing where, like, Martin Luther, he's why there's lightning striking, he's saved, I'm going to become a priest. And we don't have that. But we have those moments like you were describing, those things that you're doing in the community, those things that ground you, that keep us a little bit more fulfilled. So I think that yeah, it's one of those things that you gave me to think about a little more today too. Um, so for people that, I don't know, want to show Jesus love more in the community, well, what can they do? I'm just going to put a plug in for some of the stuff you're looking for.
Yeah, well, certainly I'm happy to connect with people anytime, to kind of sit down with them or talk on the phone about where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
I think God calls us to do different things at different times in our life, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a need in the world that only we can meet. And, life is a fluid thing.
Yeah.
So the need I can meet for somebody today probably wasn't a need I could meet for that person 5 years ago,
Right.
right? We are evolving into who we're called to be all
Mm-hmm.
the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really interesting when people say, hey, I used to do this, but I'm not really sure about that anymore. I think that's such an exciting, tangible call of the Spirit, right? To
Right.
do something new or to be pushed in a new direction. So I love to talk to people about how that piece of their own faith can be fulfilled by being connected in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many. Racine does a really good job of taking care of each other. There are so many great organizations here
Mm-hmm.
that people can connect with and that are really community driven.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy to plug in here. And there's a big need. I mean, there's a need in every community.
There is.
People need people who care about them, who want the best for them, who don't want to fix them, but are willing to follow that model of Jesus and walk alongside
Right.
and be there and be supportive and be understanding. And,
Yeah.
when they fall, help pick people back up. But
Right.
knowing that then in your life, that's going to ebb and flow. You're going to be the person that needs the picking up at some point. Somebody's going to be there for you. So yeah,
Absolutely.
So when you can extend the hand, you should.
Right.
Because you're going to be reaching for it at some point.
Yeah. And I like the idea of, taking church on the road, being outside of and in the community. Because that's truthfully what I think that we're, called to do all the time.
Yeah, I think my faith became most real and alive to me when I moved it outside of the walls of the church. That's where I really was like, wow, Jesus was really onto something.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus shows us exactly what it means to live a life of faith, a life of grace, a life of love. And
Mm-hmm.
we're never going to reach
Right.
Jesus level love, but we can try.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that sometimes too, because, like, didn't have a house, hung out wherever people invited him in,
Right.
was always on the road, and that's just always, sharing himself, sharing the good news, and that is a model that we should ascribe to.
Right.
I mean, I do like my house though.
Yeah, I do like having a house to go home to, but there is something about moving beyond our walls. I always used to say, just because our building looks like a bubble doesn't mean we have to live in one.
Oh.
We can get beyond this bubble and realize that there's real life, real world, real people, real concerns,
Mm-hmm.
and we can be a real part of the real solution. But we have to get beyond this bubble, guys.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this has been Holly Hess. This was our first, this was been an experiment. So we'll have, some other people on Faith and Friends, but Holly was nice enough to be my guinea pig today and to talk about her faith. So I want to thank you for, spending a little time with me.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure because, she's awesome. So anyway, you can post questions on the feed a little bit later if you didn't catch this live, and we'll get to them as we see them.
Yeah.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I'm going to end broadcast.